and welcome back to Azure Terraformer. I hope you've enjoyed leveraging the Azure DevOps Terraform provider with me over the last few episodes. Took a little bit of a break to hit site to site with my UDMP, my Unity network switch. And there is a Terraform provider under development for that, so I'm pretty excited to see that. I wish I had time to contribute to it, but yeah, I've definitely started, and I've been watching the activity that's happening on it. So that should be a pretty interesting episode once we start mashing up my Unify router with that. But today I wanted to go back to Azure DevOps and start kind of extracting some of the meat out of what I provisioned with Azure DevOps into modules, and then publish those modules so that you guys can go grab my Terraform multi-stage pipeline and start spinning up projects or spinning up new repos within existing projects within your Azure DevOps environment. That's one of the cool things about the Terraform provider for Azure DevOps. It allows us to automate the automation, so we can get some of this boilerplate kind of plumbing out of the way, so that we can start working with Terraform right away and be very productive. So the goal is with just cloning the repo, running Terraform apply, you should have a fully working Terraform project up in Azure DevOps, or to be able to attach a repo with a fully working Azure DevOps pipeline to provision Terraform to Azure with that one Terraform apply. So that's what we're going for. I'm going to be publishing this Terraform module, or the Terraform modules per se, out on my GitHub. So feel free to check it out. Open issues. It's a totally dedicated repo just for this. And my multi-stage pipeline template that has the files that this Azure DevOps module is going to reference is also out there as well. So feel free to open issues and help me make that better. I hope you guys find utility out of this, and let's try and make it better as we move forward. Anyways, let's get started. I'm going to kind of go through the process of decomposing the production, I guess the actual code that I created to provision something, and I'm going to try and refactor it into reusable modules that no matter how we want to stitch together a solution, whether it's all in one go or we want to partially attach something to something existing, I want to make it flexible enough that we have some reusable tools in our tool shed, such that we have flexibility in the future, and we don't always have to just start from scratch with an entirely new project. So if you have an existing project, some of these things, some of these modules will be beneficial for you. So that's what I'm going to start by doing. I think the first thing that I want to do is I just want to create a variable group for my Terraform credentials, because I think that's one of the most common things that we're going to do. We'll start with variable groups. We'll move up the stack from there. So here I have my blank module library, and what I like to do in a module library in my Git repo is I like to create a folder structure that makes sense to me, that creates hierarchy, that is expandable for the future if I want to add additional modules. So I think right off the bat, I'm just gonna, and the beauty about this is this can change over time because we're using versioning. We don't have to worry about breaking people. Folks can make updates and change the paths when they want to upgrade in the next version, so we don't have to get it 100% right the first time. So I'm just going to start by creating a var group folder, and I'm going to create a specific type of var group. Okay. So a specific type of var group is an Azure credential. And the first thing that I need to do is I need to drop my primary resource. And so right off the bat, I've got these variables declared here, and I've got some names going on here. And this is, you'll notice the code that I took from when I actually deployed this from scratch. And In those episodes, we weren't doing this with modules. We were just building one root module, and we're just doing a one shot. But now I want to kind of refactor this to make this reusable. So I don't want to embed things like count in there, because I want the count to be the counter for each or any iteration to be extracted and the responsibility of the consuming module. The project ID is not going to, the project's not going to be provisioned within this module, so it's going to have to be an input variable. The name and description, I should probably make that such that somebody could pass that in, and and set that up, to their heart's content, and not hard code strings like this in there. So right off the bat, I'm just kind of analyzing my old code, looking for opportunities to refactor it, and basically planning my course here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my variables to the side, and I'm just going to start extracting variables. Project ID, that's going to be required. You're absolutely going to need a project ID. Now, description I feel like should be nullable. So I'm going to set, I actually don't know if this is a required or optional field, but I'm gonna set a default of empty string just in case somebody doesn't care to set a description. I'm just gonna allow them to do that. I need to check and see what allow access is about. I'm gonna leave that hard coded for now, and we'll see how that plays out. Now, for the Azure Credentials, I think it might make sense to declare this as maybe an object. Okay, so I've got that set up. So now I just need to start replacing. I can get rid of the count, and now I just need to start replacing the hard-coded values with my input variables. Okay, there we go. So I think I got this set up pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this configuration. I have a very simple module that is one very opinionated type of an Azure DevOps Variable Group. I'm going to rename this to something a little bit more generic because that's implicit within the name of this module. Now, one thing that I'm going to do is, maybe I want to expand in the future and support GCP or AWS or different types of variable groups that I want to make very simple to use. I don't like these repeating variable blocks, so maybe I could create a more generic module that's not as specific, that's not as opinionated, that does clean up the interface a little bit to my resource block, and let's see how that goes. So I'm going to refactor this. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to create a baseline, and I'm going to copy pasta my very opinionated module. And now I'm going to declare, instead of just having these variables as independent blocks, I'm going to create a dynamic block here. And so now that I have this dynamic block here, I just need to delete all the other blocks, and then I just need to go declare this input variable, which is a collection of variables, and each variable is going to have a name, a value, and whether it's a sacred or not. And this is going to, of course, be a Boolean. And so now I have my inputs. My description is still an optional field. I have the project ID, which of course is definitely required. And now I have a much more generic module that I think does kind of simplify the usage of this variable group. And so now if I want to reuse this baseline module, Instead of having this block here, this resource block, I'm actually going to declare a module block. I'm going to call this main. And then I'm going to set the source to be up one folder, and then I'm going to hit the baseline. So now I'm really just using my baseline block, and I'm going to copy all these values in here. And now I need to set my variables to be an array. Is that right? It needs to be a list of objects. My bad. So we need to have an array of objects. And so now in here, I can literally just drop these values here. I did forget one thing. I need to set isSecret to have a default value. And now I can get rid of my resource block, and all I'm left is with my module definition. And so, you know, I'm trading basically those individual variable blocks for an array declaration of variables, which to me seems a little bit simpler to pass in a collection of objects than to declare a bunch of independent hard-coded blocks. Let me do the last thing, which is to make this isSecret an optional attribute of this with the default of false. There we go. And I think I'm pretty good there. So now let's see. I should probably create a sample to verify that this is working. So, and in this sample, all we're going to do is we're going to declare an Azure Credential module. Okay, so now I also have to authenticate with Azure DevOps. So I need to in my code, in my sample here, I'm going to create a new file, which is just going to be my debug.sh. I'm going to set the pat token in here. I need to set the org service URL. And I need to set the personal access token. And then I can run Terraform plan, and we can see what's going on here. Now the service org URL, as you recall, is this thing right here. So if I go put that there, should be if I can spell it properly, should be good. Now we need to run Terraform init, and we're just going to use local state. So now this is in this file. It's of course a hidden file. So I need to go change mod +x. Okay, now I can run, and we should be authenticating okay with Azure DevOps. Okay, now we have our first error. Invalid value for input variable. Did I mess this up somehow? So my Azure Credentials, it's this object that's being passed in, and it looks like it's a bug within this thing right here. So invalid value for input variable in my Azure Credential, variables equals an array of objects. The given name is not suitable for module Azure Credentials module var.variables declared at baseline variables.tf. Attribute value is required. Did I not? Oh, I just copy pasted the secret value. Whoops. Yep. How did I do that? That's kind of silly. Oh, and that actually, the plot thickens, because if it is a secret, I need to not set the value. I need to set the secret value. So I need to say variable is secret, and if that's true, then I need to set the value to null. And then the secret value, I need to do the exact opposite. So I'm just going to say is secret. Then I do want to set the value. And if it is not a secret, I set it to null. So you can see here, I've got opposite, logic here. Because I chose to make this a positive is secret and not a negative is not secret. That means if the value is a secret, then the value should be null. Like we're not going to use the value. And if the value is a secret, we do want to set the value. But of course, I'm using the same structure to pass in my values. Unlike this resource block, it has two different values. One for one for stuff that's a secret and one for stuff that's not a secret. So so in this case, I even like my module even more because now I am kind of standardizing how the values are passed into the module, and I'm abstracting the complexity of that resource, saving the secret value to a different attribute. So I kind of like that a lot, actually. So now let's try this again and let's see if we like it more. Hey, Wally, are you going to help me? Okay, well, yeah, well, I'm going to need your help. So unsupported attribute on my baseline module is secret. The object does not have an attribute named as secret. So I'm wondering if it's because I'm using optional, it doesn't always come in there. So we're now into the baseline module where I've set the variable group resource, and is secret is not. Object does not have an attribute named is secret. So I do have variables. Let's go look at this one more time. So my for each is variables, and that means that this is the pointer to each item in that list, and I have a variable.name, a variable.value, and then a variable.isSecret. Now, what if I don't make this optional? Hi, Wally. Are you very concerned? Am I doing the right thing, Wally? Am I doing the right thing? Yeah? Am I doing the right thing? Let's see if it has something to do with the optional. Of course, now the error has been bubbled up to my Azure credential because, of course, my Azure credential, I don't always pass in whether it's is secret or not, right? So sometimes I'm passing it in, sometimes I'm not. So I think my assertion there was accurate. It does not like the optional. Okay, maybe not. So we're back to is secret. Is secret is bool. We have a list of objects. Object has a name, value, and an is secret. I feel like there's just too many variables going on here. I got variables, var.variables. It's all like getting a little dicey. Let's call this variable list, just so that it stands out a little bit more. So we're doing that for each on my variable list, and yep, now this is broken, so we no longer have variables, we have variable list. It does not like my is secret. Am I just staring at this and like having a terrible time here? Variable is secret. We do have a secret. Let me just call this secret. The object does not have the attribute named secret. Okay, so it's the problem of the object in my collection, which does not have an attribute named secret. It doesn't make a lot of sense because I've declared my object. So I have a list here. And I have an object in that, and each item in this list is an object. So I have a variable list, and I'm setting my for each to my variable list. And now this variable should be an item there. Inappropriate value for attribute secret value. String required. I mean, maybe I just make it blank. If the value is not a secret. Do you like that? Do you like that idea, Wally? We've got lots of errors, and it's all around this secret. The true and false results expressions must have consistent types. The true value is an object. Oh man, I'm very so there's too many variables going on here, right? So here's what's happening. I need to go variable.value. Everything needs to be variable.value, and then value.value, which is hella confusing, right? And I think that should make it happy. It's a lot happier now. So I wonder if I can make this null now, because previously it was like, it didn't, yeah. So, wow, this is where these dynamic blocks can get a little dicey when everything like has the similar names. It gets very meta very quickly. So you can see like I changed this to be a variable list so that it was a little bit less confusing for me. I changed this to secret so that it stood out more. I do think I should call that is secret, because that helped me confirm like where the error was, and it turns out it was actually my failure in properly addressing the correct object on this dynamic block. And so I needed to grab the value off of this reference to the item within my variables collection. And so what was happening was, basically we were, when I did variable.value, because I just happened to have an attribute called value, this actually helped me solve the problem. It thought that this value was an object and not a string, and which is true, because in the dynamic block, the variable is a reference to an item within this collection type variables, and each item in that collection is an object. It has an object of type value, and that value is the actual thing in the collection. And so I needed to jump off of the item reference to the value of the item, and then the actual variable.value is one of these objects that's declared right here, right? And that is the thing that has a string of type, value of type string, and an is secret of type bool. So that was my problem there. So that was fun. Little like word game going on here. Now let me try and unwind all this so that I use the correct things now. So we're going back to is secret. The project ID needs to be passed from. So now let me try and actually use a data source. So this is how I can make these modules more reusable, by breaking them up into smaller chunks. Let's say I have a project and I want to create a variable group just for Azure Credentials on it. I can very easily do that, and I can do that a whole bunch of times. I'm just going to go grab a sample project, and this is my project name, and I need to reference this project by going data.infra.id. and then we should be in business. And there we go. So now we've got is true on the client secret, is false on the tenant ID, and we see the values are all foo. Honestly, I don't care that they're foo. We did get a project ID, which is nice. So yeah, there we go. So I built my variable group module, which is kind of the first step in making this reusable module library for Azure DevOps. We encountered some fun times with creating dynamic blocks that had some pretty tricky, I'd say, attribute naming. When everything's named value, it all can kind of run together and look a little crazy. I was even concerned that Terraform was going to get upset that there was a nested block called variable itself, but it didn't seem to worry about that at all, because variable is a keyword within the language of HCL. And so that was kind of fun. We started off by taking completely scratch code that was 100% hard coded. We extracted it into a reusable Azure Credential Variable Group module, and then we even refactored it a little bit further to create a baseline Variable Group module that we can then use for any other variable groups of our distinction. The baseline Variable Group module adds a little bit of value in that it simplifies the interface for the secrets, and the values that you want to pass in there. Let me go back and add the optional there. See if we can bring that back. So I think we're happy with the optional. Let's see if we can drop it, and hopefully that default value should come through as false on all these. Yep, happy. So yeah, that was the last thing that I wanted to do. Glad we got that done. So we created that second layer of module with our baseline variable group module, and now we have an Azure Credential module, and then we created a sample that references an existing project and basically is going to create an Azure Credential module with a bunch of foo values in it, just to demonstrate how this module could be used with an existing project. Of course, as we add layers to this onion, we're probably going to have a project module that is going to provision a project. It's going to provision the variable group. It's going to provision all the things. But again, we want to have the option for our module consumers to go all in with us, or to use just a chunk of our module library, which is why we're embedding this composability into the modules that we create. So I hope you like this video. I know Wally did. He's been hanging out with me here to the end. He's pressing keys on my keyboard right now, trying to fix all the bugs that I wrote. So this was a lot of fun. Keep looking for new modules that I release out there. I think in the next episode, I'm going to expand on this module library, and we're going to add a repo, we're going to add a project, and we're going to try and make it so that we can create an end-to-end Terraform pipeline and project within Azure DevOps just by referencing this module and using one of the examples that I create within this repo. So smash the like button if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more. Also, let me know if there's other pipeline tools that you want to see this done on. Do you use Azure DevOps? Do you use GitHub Actions? Do you use GitLab? What pipeline tools do you use with Azure and Terraform? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what the community is using and what you guys would like to hear more about. Anyways, that's it for me. This is the Azure Terraformer signing off.